Hi everyone, welcome back to the Power of a Hobby. I'm your host, Don Fenton, and we have another guest. Hi Al, how are you?
I'm absolutely good.
Al, for people who don't know you, why don't you just introduce yourself, tell people who you are and what you do?
Thanks a lot, Don. Yeah, so thanks for having me on here. First of all, really appreciate the time you're giving me. But yeah, I'm Al Price, and I'm a branding expert. I'm known as the brand transformer within the networks I work in. My past life has been in advertising agencies, quite big advertising agencies, working on blue chip clients like Thompson's, Holidays, the Peugeot, British Gas, the list goes on. But when I had children, I decided to kind of jump off the hamster wheel and kind of work for myself. And it allowed me to work more flexibly to fit in my children growing up.
Amazing. So, as we had a brief chat beforehand, which ended up being a bit longer than I thought it would be, but that's what happens. Al, what does the power of a hobby mean to you?
Yeah, to me, it means taking something that I'm really passionate about. And in my case, it's creative thinking. I use that not just in my job, but to serve people. It could be anything from a village fete to a charity. It's so that's what it means to me. It's taking something that I'm passionate about and that I can use to serve.
Amazing. And this is with this sort of thing, I start that question because it's different for everyone, and some it is about ending up being about what you do, but actually for a lot of people, it's about who you are. And it's fundamental in terms of how people's lives have moved forward. And I can certainly say that's probably about similar for yourself.
Yes.
So in terms of creative thinking, let's go back to the very beginning. When did all of this sort of come about? When did you decide, was it something as a child you were doing? Talk to me about when this all started.
Yeah, definitely from childhood. This, I mean, I've always been quite arty. As a child, I was really into DC Comics and things like that. I used to draw Spider-Man and the Hulk, the Thing, all these characters. And, I had a knack at it. I was much better than other people in my class. And, my parents kind of recognized that. They encouraged me as well. And they said, you want to take this up, as a living. And as a child as well, I always had a very keen interest in the commercials, believe it or not. And I might be a little older than you, Dom. I don't know. We haven't discussed, but I look older. But I used to things like, like the milk tray man dressed in black, like doing his James Bond bit. I used to love those commercials, and it's just built from there, really. They were almost better than the programs in a lot of ways, the commercials. And then as I got into my teens, I started to see like the Levi's ads, which were quite revolutionary for selling jeans, a guy stripping off in the laundrette and stuff like that. And I was like, I love this. So, I'd even be at home storyboarding up commercials for myself, even while I was still at school. You know what I mean? So, which is great. And I kind of used them later on to get me as a foot in the door of advertising agencies.
Yeah, I love where a lot of these sort of things start from. So, in terms of, is that were your parents involved in anything similar? Is that where you think this came from, or do you think it was more of a case of actually, whatever reason, it just came?
Absolutely no idea. Do you know that? No, my dad was a shift worker for ICI, and my mum worked as a chef in a nightclub in Manchester. I don't know. I am left-handed, and they do say, and I'm the only left-hander in the family, and they do say that left-hand people think more with the right-hand side of the brain. I think there might be some truth in that, but yeah, it never really came from anything they've done in the last. And my dad, I mean, he's tried drawing with me, and even from the age of 6 or 7, I was better than him. So it's like he couldn't really teach me anything. But still, what was great was that, he really encouraged me, and, my family, they'd show it off to people who came round all the time, so it just gave me that extra buzz about doing that, wanting to do good stuff that, could show off really. So.
No, that's great. And obviously a lot of people have their own journey in school. So being creative, how were the teachers with you at school? Obviously your art teacher. Were you someone that actually I can do it better than you, or are you how was your school journey with this as well?
Well, it's interesting because if you see one of my school reports in primary, they seem to be all great. But when I got into secondary, and there'd be comments on there like, Alan seems to be more interested in what's going on the sports field than what's going on in class, and and that seemed to be a reoccurring thing. The only real subjects that you'd actually get me engaged in would be art and music at the time. The music lessons and the art, I'd be all over. And sometimes English, but if there was a creative story to be had, and that kind of got my attention, then I'd get involved in that really, yeah.
But I think what I think that does go to show is actually from a very young age, you're always interested in creative, because obviously when you're using words, again, that comes from English. When obviously you're doing your music, you can be as creative as you want, and also with the art as well. But actually, it just shows, and I think we find this more and more with children in schools that they're trying to put in certain directions, and actually, it's about what they enjoy.
Absolutely. I do think that creativity is driven out of kids these days, Dom. It's a personal view, but I think that they get set up for the hamster wheel, rather than being all about grammar at first. Maybe, in my opinion, let them be creative. I don't know if you've heard that story about a child in school that wasn't engaging, but one day they did an art class and the teacher noticed, let's call her Grace. She's scribbling away frantically. And the teacher's thinking, well, this is a turn up. Grace getting involved. And he goes, he says, Grace, what are you doing? What are you drawing? She says, I'm drawing God. And the teacher says, nobody knows what God looks like. And as quick as a flash, Grace said, well, they will in a minute. And it's that, what I love is it's that chance-ability, they're not confined, it's like they're free of mind, and it's that kind of, that story there, it's a teacher that's kind of thinking, nobody knows what that looks like. But in Grace's mind, she does know what God looks like. And, the creativity is coming out there.
I think creativity is so important. We try and, I work within that sector. So I work within education, I work with schools. And the amount of children we see that actually they're not academically driven, but actually they can be very good at sport, they can be very, very good at creative, we need to encompass that, we need to support that, and we need to go, you know what, that's okay, because actually there's a path for every child, and there's a path for every adult.
100% agree with that, Tom.
So in terms of, can you remember the first piece of creative work that you did that you were like, oh, actually, I can do this, or,
Well, I'd say, it's different really. There was one, it's a northern thing this, so I don't think half your audience will get it. But there was a commercial up north called Greenall Whitley, and the campaign was, they had this situation, whereas there'd be like, it could be somebody in the French Foreign Legion, and he's trying to hold the court and hold the fort, and it's absolutely hopeless because they're getting bombarded, and he's got his people next to him getting shot and killed, and he just sits down and he starts singing, I wish I was in Greenall Whitley land. Where beer is free and this, that, and the other, and it cuts to this beautiful idyllic pub where he can be having his favourite pint and stuff like that. And at the end of it, he gets back up and and start shooting. So I decided to come up with my own, but it was based in a monastery mine, and it had all the monks doing like the vow of silence. But one's just like, really, I've had enough of this. And he just stands up and starts singing, I wish I was in Reno, Italy land. And then, it goes to the buxom barmaid and all that sort of stuff. And it goes back, and suddenly there's a crack of lightning from God. And there's just like a pile of dust where the monk was. And then the others go, oh my God. And then they're all taken out as well. So there's just like about 5 little heaps of ash where they were, So, and I'd say that is probably the first thing I did, when we're saying that I was doing storyboards at home, thinking, oh, I could do something like that. So that would have been the very first one, I think, that I did.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's brilliant. I will have to see it. You'll have to do another version of that and send it to me. We'll have to look at that. So in terms of, obviously you started doing this, you've gone through school. Obviously you had the support from your mum and dad in terms of this. Talk to me about that next step. So you left school and then decided to go down that route.
Yeah, so I went to college and I got on a BTEC course in graphic design. And the beauty of the BTEC course was that they put you on a placement in advertising agencies for 4 days a week in the advertising agency. So you only came into college for the 1 day. And what that allowed me to do over, it was a 2-year course, but it allowed me to build up my portfolio, which is, that's your CV really, to get into any advertising agency is what's in your portfolio. So it's either coursework in college, which, there are people going like 3-year courses, or, what I've put in my book, working for agencies. And I was very lucky because I worked at a big agency in Manchester called J. Walter Thompson's, who were a worldwide agency. So they had some lovely accounts. And they'd let me shadow them. The art director and copywriter, me as a junior, I had to do all the brew making, and we used to spray mount to mount things down. In those days, there was no Macintoshes. It was all magic markers and layout pads. So you had to think and draw and all that kind of thing. But it was a great start for me. And because I was working to real deadlines in the end, rather than at college, you could get like 3 months to work on one project. So it really prepared you for your onward journey, which was, it was brilliant for me. So I got a City & Guilds in the art and design, as well as the BTEC as well, so to take me on. But I've never used it. It's always been what's in my book that I've been hired on. Nobody's ever asked about.
It's amazing how those go, doesn't it? It's amazing how that works.
Yeah.
So done that. Obviously, family life. Obviously, then children came along. So what was it made you suddenly stop and go, actually, I need to be, this is what I want to be doing?
Yeah. From agency life and starting a family, I've got 2 children. I've got a daughter who's 6 years older than my son. And when I was working in the agency life, I was working a lot of hours and right into the night, sometimes overnight. That's the way that they used to do it when they were pitching for a client. I think, they didn't pay me overtime. It was, you get paid in pizza for your supper, and then you stay through and you work through till all the designs and creative is done. And that was happening a lot. And, I kind of got an appreciation when other parents were, in advertising, were complaining about the hours and stuff. And, without children, I didn't really see it. But once I had children, I realised that I was missing out, and I missed out on quite a bit of my daughters kind of growing up. And I just made a decision. It was kind of made for me, really, because by the time my son came along, I was creative director of an advertising agency, and I'd been asked to make people redundant on 2 cycles already over a couple of years. And it came to making people redundant again. and they had to make 4 people redundant. And I said, well, I'm not doing it. I said, you can make me redundant because, it's people's livelihoods here,
Yeah.
and I've done it in the past, but I felt that creativity was their only point of difference, and it seemed to be the creative department was the place they picked on first. So I wasn't up for that. And I said, well, I'll take voluntary redundancy. And I did that just coming into a recession as it was, so, which is quite interesting. But as it was, it worked out very well for me. I started working for a government agency as a contractor, and that kind of got me into this situation then where I could work 3 days for them and, be at home and see my lad as well. And then what that did, as the recession really hit in, and Gordon Brown at the time handed over the keys to the Conservatives, saying, there's no money left. They pulled right back on what I was doing and said, now you've got to start designing in Word so that we can pick it up. And, we can't go to these big flash brochures anymore. We've got to be able to print in one colour off the Xerox, sorry. So I thought, it's not for me, this life. And I made the move then by contacting ex-clients that I used to get on with very well in the advertising world. And I managed to secure a client in the building trade. And that helped me then exit from the government contract I was under to actually go it alone, which was then great because I was at home all the time. I could work my hours around my son at the time. So, because as he was coming up from school, I could help with all that. We could go out and play on the local park for football and all that kind of gear. And then when he goes to bed at 8 o'clock, I can jump back online, and work. So that was great, because even today I have such a strong bond with him. He's known as my wingman on social media with me all the time, and I think we both benefited from, that flexibility that this creative hobby of mine gives me.
And the thing is, we find out a lot how important family is. And actually, where you have a hobby that actually has enabled you to do what you do, it's so important.
Very much so.
It's so important to be able to go and have that flexibility, because I suppose a lot of people talk to me about, not just on this podcast, but just generally about the amount of times hobbies have turned into work, or hobbies, and because it's what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
I can't imagine not doing what I'm doing now, because it is what drives you, and it gives you that flexibility. Did you? And I know I sort of know the answer to this one. So if you imagine you as a child now doing your designs, doing your drawings, doing your storyboards, did you imagine that you'd be in the position you are now because of your hobby?
Yes, absolutely. I looked at the situation. I was very good at doing portraits of people in oil pastels as well, very realistic kind of oil pastels. But I kind of knew, even from a younger age, that to be an artist, I'd probably need to be dead before the money's coming in. Looking at some of these past masters who, earned a lot of money after they died,
their part,
after them when they were there. So it was always thinking about it as growing up, thinking commercially, how could I help this make me a living, what I love?
Yeah.
And I did, that if it was raining outside, I'd be in drawing or creating something. Why don't you might have helped with that as well for the older viewers to get involved in that sort of thing. But that was it really.
And I think if you're sort of looking at what's been the proudest moment you've had doing what you do?
Well, it's a bit controversial, this, Dom, but I'm going to say it.
That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. No, there was a situation a couple of years ago where the government were going to sack the NHS staff.
Yeah.
NHS staff who hadn't taken, the COVID jab, if I'm allowed to say that. they were going to get sacked because they were being coerced into having it. And, there's trust. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, these same people I was banging my pans on the side of the road for, and now they're going to sack him. So I got in touch with some NHS 100 who were doing a big old protest in London to try and help save the jobs of these people. And they were kicking off about it. And I did this visual, which was like a blue balloon, it was, with a finger with a pin on it, just about to touch the balloon. And that's what I could see. If all these NHS staff were going to get canned within a week, which it was,
Yeah.
it was about a week away from getting canned, the NHS surely is going to go pop. So I had on the writing on it, was jobs over jabs. And that turned into a fantastically massive march around London, where we had all these big blue helium balloons as well, and giving them out to kids. The press really got behind it, which was great for our NHS staff. And there was this scene where the NHS staff were throwing their uniforms over Downing Street's gates, a historical moment, really. And that seemed to coincide with an NHS staff employee pulling up, I think it's Sajid Javid, at the time was the health minister, about why am I going to lose my job because I don't want to take, that jab. And within a day or two of that, we'd had the protest on the weekend. By the Wednesday, the government had done a complete U-turn. And, with the movement that I was in, they had like a post kind of meeting that I was invited down to Birmingham, and I got a standing ovation for it in the room from everyone, which, it really touched me. It really did. And, I took it in with gratitude. But I thought, yeah, that's what it's all about. And I didn't get involved for money. I got involved because I thought, no, this is wrong. These people shouldn't be losing their jobs, as has proved to be correct now, as it's coming out. So I'd say that is one of my proudest moments. Apart from that, winning the awards is always a proud moment. I want to, being a creative as I am, but I actually wrote a radio commercial for Peugeot, which earned me an award as well. So my writing skills, even though I didn't do that great in my exams at school, I actually won an advertising award for my creative writing for a radio show that I used. The actor who played Ron Weasley's dad in Harry Potter, he's called Mark Thompson, I think. Well, he had a character in the Fast Show as well, which is a show from the 90s and 90s, I think, where I used that character for this Peugeot commercial, which won an award. And, going up that was my very first award. To collect that at Black Tie Do, I was really proud of myself, to be honest. Yeah.
Love that. And I suppose what that even just that shows is that the different, as someone creative and creative designer and everything else, there are so many different projects you can get involved with.
Yeah.
And you're not just kept in one direction.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things this is your path and that's it. Well, actually with you, I suppose, and then you can pick and choose who you work with as well, which I think is always key. Yeah,
no, it's great. And again, on that subject, there was the National Asthma Campaign. We mentioned off camera that, I've suffered with asthma since I was 2 years old. And I came up with a great campaign for National Asthma Campaign. And again, that was just off my own back because I'd ended up in hospital. About 20% of my breathing capacity. They had to have me on ventilators and, with steroids pumping into me and all sorts. And, a doctor, when I was, recovering in the hospital, I was in there for about a week. And he said, are you taking your steroids? And I was like, no. I said, because I kind of read that, and my dad told me that they're bad for me, and some of that I'd read in The Sun. So, or The Star or something like that. And he said, well, if you took your steroids, with the doses and the amount we prescribed to you, you wouldn't have any asthma symptoms. And I was like, this is amazing. Because I'm a keen footballer, I always have been. And I run around with a Ventolin in my hand.
Yeah.
And he's saying, you took your steroids, you wouldn't need that Ventolin running around in your hand. So from that, I did extensive research on athletes and found that so many athletes have asthma, and they do really well. So there's people like Paul Scholes who played for Man United, Paul Warhurst. There was a runner called Matthew Yates, who's an Olympic runner. There was a swimmer called Nick Gillingham at the time. And I was like, wow, all these people. And then I found out that to do what they do, they take steroids. And I was like, this is amazing. And obviously, I don't know if you can see it coming, but I had this idea, whereas I'd have a picture of like Scholesy doing an overhead kick and the line being steroids gave me spectacular results. So it's quite mischievous in a way, because you think they're not allowed to take steroids. But when you get into the copy, yes, you are.
Yeah.
And it's saying about the amounts of deaths from asthma. If they took the steroids, that would be cut by, I can't remember now, it might be 70% of that would be reduced, by taking the right medication at the right time. So I think that's definitely worth bringing into this, because it was for the National Asthma Campaign that I came up with that for you.
Love it. Love it. Right, Al, last question. We've taken up enough of your time now. If someone came to you and said, look, we really want a hobby, but we don't know where to start, what would you say to them?
I'd probably tell them to go back to the childhood, like with me, and what used to give them a buzz then. It's like, it might be stamp collecting. They might have done stamp collecting as a kid. I don't know. I mean, I loved art, and that's why, it could be like, I said about the oil pastels. If they were good with a certain medium in thingy, go and do it. Go and bring your inner child out and find it, discover it, whatever you like. Try it as a hobby and see if you can take to it. They are brilliant.
Love it. And it's so simple. For a lot of people, it's so simple. We think that hobbies are only for children.
Absolutely.
But actually, we need them.
Yeah, and do you know what? It's a funny one. I'm thinking of taking up the oil pastels again, to do portraits of people. It might be loved ones. I did one, the last one I did a few years ago, and I thought, I'm going to start doing that again. It was for a granddad that had just passed away. And I just brought him back to life with this picture, that I did, used from photographs that I was given, but just to do that. And I'm thinking, I did really enjoy it, but I just don't use it because in my day-to-day. So I think I am going to reintroduce myself back to that. So watch this space, Dom.
You'll have to come on again and we can talk about that.
Brilliant. Show me wares. Yeah.
Yeah, here we go.
Here we
go.
Want to buy a portrait?
Yeah, exactly. We'll put it all over.
Caricatures.
Al, for people who may want to find you or reach out to you or drop you a message, where can they find you?
Yeah, I've got a website which is the brandtransformers.com. So it's the brandtransformers.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well, so if anybody wants to find me, I'm actually not on my Sunday name there. I am Alan, but I'm known as Al Price on LinkedIn, so they can find me under Al Price on LinkedIn. So they're the best two places to find me, really.
And just so people are aware, the logos for The Power of a Hobby and also my new podcast, The Charity Connector, all done by Mr. Al Price. So thank you very much.
For the business.
Cheers, no problem. Thanks for your time, Al. I'm sure we'll catch up again soon because I've got a few projects that I'm thinking of now that I'm going to speak to you about off air. So, but that'll be good. So thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been The Power of a Hobby. I'm your host, Dom Fenton, and it's bye for now. Take care now. Bye-bye.